All right. Recording has started and I will share my screen, Jim. All right.
Okay, we're beginning with this.
Yep, I thought we'd go ahead and start with this.
Sure. Okay. As all of you know, we began this family council, Lori and I think it was right after COVID. So we've been going 4 or 5 years. And over that time, we had a presentation by Megan Moody, who was at the ARC at that time. And she said that in addition to a regular family council like we have, best practice is for agencies to have an advisory council that has input on actual decision making within an organization. And so, using the slogan from the disability rights movement, "Nothing about us without us," over the last year, another family member who is often on these calls, Candace Goldstein, who has a son in services, and I have been working with Lori and her team to set up this subcommittee of the Family Council that would be strictly an advisory group. And so you can go to the next slide, Lori.
Sorry, I didn't even start it right, did I? There we go.
So the purpose of this advisory group is to be a formal way of integrating family voices into the design and evaluation of AID policies and programs. It is an advisory committee. Decision making rests with Lori and her executive staff at AID. But it's a way of having formal input into decisions as they're being made by the agency. So we're really trying to formalize that process. As we've currently structured the committee, it would have 6 to 9 family members and 5 to 6 senior staff members from AID that would compose the committee. You can advance, Lori. In terms of the family members on the advisory committee, we're looking to be diverse. We would like to cover all of the geographical areas, especially North and South, that we cover in our DD programs. We want to cover family members of individuals receiving SILA services, as well as those who are in the home base program. Obviously, we'd love to have a diversity in terms of age and gender and race and whatever other demographic variables there are out there. So we are going to be looking for a diverse group of parents. We're envisioning parents serving a 3-year term on this committee. There will be 4 to 6 meetings a year, and I think we had settled on 4, hadn't we, Lori?
Yeah, every quarter.
Yep, every quarter. And the meetings would be co-chaired by the family member that would be the head of the advisory group and the staff member that would be their counterpart. So what we're going to do within the next week or so is send out to all of you by email an application or information about the application process. This is going to be a selected committee, and so that is the sort of the background of how this came to be. I really think it's a good step forward. My sister is a nurse, and for years in healthcare, family advisory and patient advisory committees have been best practice. So I think this is a good move for AID. Lori, anything you want to add to my explanation?
I'm going to stop sharing so that I can maybe see everybody. There we go. I don't really have anything to add. It's just a way to more have a more formal setup of advisory. We've had advisory as one of our roles on the family council, right? And I don't feel like I have had the wherewithal to plan those advisory sessions to the best that they could be, and would like to hear from the co-chair of the family member along with the staff person, setting those agendas for the quarter and what those discussions will be, and look forward to doing this. We also are in the process, or need to be in the process of having input from our residents and consumers, right? And the people that we serve, because it's definitely nothing about us without us when it comes to them, who are the direct recipients of the services and supports at AID. Gina, you have your hand up.
Yes, would this be with team meetings or would it be in person? Because that might change who could apply or whatever.
Yeah, I think ideally when we were setting this up or beginning our conversations, it was that it would be in person 4 times a year. I think that is to be determined going forward. Certainly doing it virtually would make it easier for some people.
Yeah, we have done what we've done basically ever since COVID, like with our board of directors or our committees that meet of the board, we've made them hybrid, right? So that, if people could come in person, we have that in person, but if not, we always have this option, right, to add in. So I think we could consider, making that available as well. I mean, it's always I don't know, a more engaging when you're all together, right? In many ways, but it's just not always practical or able to be done depending upon weather and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, the hybrid model might be the way to go. That's a good point. Other questions from family members? So getting this advisory committee really formalized is sort of the task for the next few months. I also have a couple of things that I'd like to say to you all. I've been on the AID board for a number of years, and the chair of the board, Cliff Klotz, resigned last week because of some health concerns. And so I have taken the helm as the chair of the board of directors of AID. And because I want to really clearly separate my role as a parent advocate from my role as a board member, it seems right for me to relinquish the leadership of this particular group and not to serve as a member of the advisory committee that we're going to formalize over the next few weeks. I will be involved in helping get the new committee up and running since I've been involved in developing it. But I think it's really important for me as a leader on the board now to really separate my advocacy role as a parent from my board leadership role. And so we're going to be looking for a new person to work with Lori around coordinating the family council events. And so if you are interested in that, please reach out either to Lori or to me, and we'll get that transition underway. And of course, I'm going to be on every one of these Zooms, and I'm not going anywhere. This family council, I think, is a really important function that AID does for parents and guardians and siblings. So thank you for letting me make that announcement.
Thanks, Jim. We are going to the content of this meeting today, because it is one that you may have extensive questions on. And I am going to throw it over to our experts in the field. Today we're going to be discussing the rate sheets that tell AID what type of funding we receive in order to support your loved ones, and what their expectations of what we do with those funds, what hours go where, etc. And Sam is going to be doing this presentation. So I'm going to throw it over to Samantha Moylan, who is the Associate Vice President of IDD Services at AID. Sam, do you want me to run your PowerPoint for you, or?
If you can just give me permission to share.
Hang on a second. I gotta remember how to do it. I go to you over here. I think you can. Do you not see
Yeah,
it?
I just clicked, so maybe I can. No.
Another person is having trouble logging in
Getting
like
in?
I did. Is there some way to get around it?
Can I send them directly the link?
Send it to Georgine. She's been
Georgine?
trying. She's
Okay.
been hitting the same hang tight. We're gonna let you in, and
Yep.
that's what I got. But I like to click stuff, so I finally got it to work.
Yeah, I'll tell her I'm forwarding her the link.
Okay, thanks.
Is everyone able to see the window?
Yep.
Awesome. I will be able to see you because I'm not as great with the presentation. So if you have something, please feel free to interrupt me briefly. Or I'm sorry, please feel free to interrupt me, but I want to do a more brief overview of the Scylla rate sheets for everyone. So I have taken one rate sheet here and broken it out into 7 small sections. Section 1 goes through individual, provider, and site information. Section 2 has all of an individual's billable supports. Section 3, you'll see they're kind of numbered in margin. So section 3 is the detailed breakout of all those rate components. Section 4 reviews medical supports. Section 5 total rate calculation, and section 7 has other site identifiers and notes for providers.
Hey, Sam, you froze on 5, so can you do 5 on again?
Yes, 5 is community day services supports. 6 is a tiny bracket in the lower left corner with the total rate calculation. And number 7 is the bottom section with site identifiers and notes for the provider. So starting in section 1, the individual's information is listed first, so their legal name. I have put some asterisks beside some information here that later on is used to determine some of these rate factors. So the Scylla complete address, including the city and zip code, the ICAP service score highlighted in blue here, along with the maladaptive behavior index and the date that assessment was completed. The individual's mobility status, which is also a factor in some of our rate information, their gender. The next box would include their self-administration of medication assessment status. There'll be a little abbreviation. So featured here in this box is NIA, or not independent in administration. Also in this section shows their healthcare level and their data assessed and agency RN does those assessments. The next box, it should have for your loved ones AID as the provider with our federal and state identifiers below that. And then the final box in this section talks about the Scylla location itself. So we have our Bureau of Accreditation, Licensure and Certification site capacity. So that is the total number of clients that the site is licensed to reside at that Scylla. That considers the bedroom size, whether there would be a shared bedroom or not. And then the working site capacity, which would be the total clients that will actually reside at that Scylla, where You'll see this particular location is licensed for up to 8. However, at AID, we don't do shared bedrooms. So this site has a working capacity of 4. The next box is the site ID identifier for DDD, the supervision level, so the 24-hour, and then the night shift status for staff, whether they're awake or asleep. The site's county and DDD network region are identifiers for DDD. The Scylla's ownership status, whether it's agency owned or independently controlled, meaning the individual has a lease directly to the landlord. And then the next section, the next little box there indicates the individual's ISC and the corresponding region key there. Moving into the next sections, factors that are impacted by all of that individual information. The first one is the individual staff breakdown. So the first 2 rows of the individual staff breakdown are the base coverage that is funded for all residents in that Scylla site based on the working capacity. The Scylla GH, so group home 5-hour model funded staff, is based on the individual's ICAP and healthcare level, and that provides a modifier for additional staff hours based on their needs. And then intensive staff hours in the lower box, long-term intensive staff hours are awarded by an application process and would provide additional staff hours in the Scylla sites ratio. On the right-hand side, our nursing supports that are awarded are also based on healthcare level nursing treatments and medications that are outlined in the health risk screening tool. And that is performed annually or updated as needed by the program nurse. The division pulls that information every 6 months to evaluate if there's a change in an individual's healthcare level. And then finally, our mobility status, ambulatory or non-ambulatory, does impact our transportation rate factors. A non-ambulatory mobility status does generate a higher award to cover accessible vehicle costs. Moving into section 2, we talk about billable supports that are in an individual's rate. And so intensive staff supports would be the first 2 lines indicated there. These are awarded on a temporary, which means there's a limited amount of hours awarded and they do not renew, or a long-term basis, which automatically renews and is recalculated annually, or with a significant change for the individual or the overall Scylla factors. So if an individual moves in or out, they take a look at the awarded hours again. The ISC services are billable are provided and billed by Service Inc. of Illinois, but you'll always see those in your rate sheet. And then dietitian services may be showing here, but they've actually been relocated to our medical supports. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy are more traditionally accessed through medical providers. So we typically don't see an award in those sections. But the next set below are our behavior intervention services, which are awarded to all Scylla individuals, whether they're intermittent or they are 24-hour. Behavior intervention level 1 services are provided by a board certified behavior analyst. And then level 2 services are provided by a behavior therapist, which is has an education requirement plus supervised work experience. Then we also have therapy and counseling in our DD rates. There are 57U and 57G services provided by a licensed social worker. 58U and G are provided by a licensed clinical social worker. Each individual is awarded up to 60 hours in combination between those two professionals, the same as the 104 hours with the behavior intervention, can be a combination. You just can't exceed the maximum. Onto the left-hand column of a full rate sheet, this is a detailed breakout that is provided for the room and board costs first, which are determined by county and the working capacity of the Scilla site. The overall cost distribution, you can see it's broken down by housing, telephone, building insurance. It's awarded as indicated, but the provider can distribute those as needed to cover our actual costs. The next program box section there talks about staff and supervision. It identifies the hours awarded by position and their reimbursement rates. So the wage rates, you can see that increases. We have not gotten a new sheet. This one that I used was effective 7/1/2024. So there'll be a change in those Chicago Metro wage rates reflected next time we get our sheets generated. But these are broken down by prime time, which is the most active times in the Scilla, the night, which would be the individual sleeping hours, and then non-prime is what there is defined as all other hours. There used to be some variable rates that were reimbursed based on prime time and nighttime, whether people were awake or asleep. And they have moved away from that, but their matrix still reflects that. There is an award for each individual to cover some of our substitute staff costs, our QIDP and supervisor costs there. And then you'll see the final row is that DDD promised adjustment of 181 hours. Nobody's going to lose any hours. They told us, they promised us. And so those are broken out there for us. Other fringe benefits, supplies, consultant services, and our base nursing assessment services are outlined in this cost breakout, as well as this is where we find our transportation costs being reimbursed. And the final three factors are a little newer for DD rates. We have a program support factor and administration cost factor. And these are determined as a percentage of the overall rate awarded. And then finally, the new occupancy factor, which eliminated the need to do lots of bed holds. The occupancy factor is a supplemental pay that we receive every day that we bill someone is present in the Scilla, and it covers absences from the Scilla for about 18.5 days away.
Before you go off of this page, Sam, I just want to point out, and this will be the same with many of the services that are provided through Scilla. If you look at the housing costs, $5,406 for a year of housing, that's $450.50 a month. I don't know anyone whose rent or a mortgage payment equals $450.50 a month, except for when I lived in Decatur. And then the transportation costs are about $2,800. I don't know if you bought a vehicle recently, but that's $239.92 a month to pay for the vehicle and all of its maintenance, upkeep, gas, insurance, and everything, right? So again, don't know, you know, my car payment is significantly more than that. And then you add on gas and maintenance and upkeep, right? So I'm just saying this to say that even when you bundle these amounts together for a group of people, right? Where at AID, we traditionally have a 4-person a group home mostly, like that's our average size. You are not near to getting the cost of just what the physical requirements of the property and the transportation are. Thanks, Sam, for letting me interrupt.
No, absolutely an excellent point, because that $10,374 for room and board is the same for each person in that location as well. So if there's 4, they're all 4 the same. That factor is not variable. And so if someone has a highly specialized diet or some other types of needs, or the phone service, we can only get AT&T maybe, and Xfinity would be cheaper. You know, those kinds of costs are not always covered, and those are things that we have to work around or utilize the program support factor or administration funding to kind of like distribute those actual costs. And the non-ambulatory vehicle reimbursement really is only about $1,000 more. It's not much to kind of cover those differences either. Our next box is our community day services. You know, my slides may have gotten out of order. I'm sorry. I think medical should actually be next, but we'll go to community day services. This covers our 31C or off-site community day services, which reimburses at a higher rate for community activity, and our 31U, which reimburses for all community day services provided at agency locations. The next line is a 31V or virtual community day services, which was a COVID era offering that has actually been discontinued. That still lingers there. And then down below, another community day services is our enhanced residential habilitation. And that's what, you know, it might be heard around as at-home day services. And that's a structured activity program provided in the individual's residence. Any combination of those services can be billed for up to 1,200 hours per year. And then, as you can see, the intensive staff supports on a temporary and long-term basis as well may be available if they are applied for and awarded in the community day services program. There is also a supported employment services, which is a partnership with DRS, that an application is sent for that funding once competitive employment is secured. And those are revalidated annually, and all of that is based on the individual request for that supported employment service. There are services and supports that require submissions to ISC for DDD to review the requests, and that includes our temporary and long-term intensive staff supports in the residential program, or the 53R, the temporary or long-term intensive staff supports in the community day services program, or 53D. Again, all of the supported employment services and the at-home day programs, as well as in our medical section A, the dietitian award of 12 hours a year to have a dietitian evaluate and support staff and individual with specialized diets. These submissions often require a request form, a cover letter, pounds of supporting documentation, and even sometimes additional forms from DDD that are completed by the individual's case manager and their program team members. We have an excruciatingly long wait sometimes to hear back from DDD about their decision. Other requests that we can make for services that aren't outlined in rate sheets may include things like remote supports or adaptive equipment, assistive technology. They have a similar process. In section 6, the annual and top line rate gives us the total annual and per day rate for all included supports. That does not factor in all of those billable supports, because those are based on use. And the overall amount there is reduced by the annual unearned income that the SILA provider collects. So your SSI, SSDI is subtracted from that, and we're reimbursed based on that. In section 7, that's actually where there is a note from DDD to providers about any information that's needed, including that we are required to collect that. They call it a third-party liability. And then in the real the far right bottom corner, is a Scylla site ID and a bulk ID, and each Scylla site is identified by the Bureau of Accreditation, Licensure, and Certification, and DDD with a unique site ID. They are not the same site ID. It is not a fun process, but each site does have unique identifiers. Thank you.
All right. I know that people have questions. Before I have Samantha take off of the slides, are there any slide that you have, like any of the sections that you have a specific question about, or or do you just want to ask general question? I mean, it's, this is you guys' information and what you're trying to learn. So what do you want?
And just as a quick aside, we will ask that that someone from development post these slides on the page, that you all have access to, so that you can print them, review them, etc.
Well, and we always upload them with the recording of the actual event tonight in our family council section within the website as well. So I
Jen,
saw Kathy first, and then Gina, and then Jim.
I guess, do the guardians have access to the rate sheet for the individual? Can we see that rate sheet for? Can you hear me? Does that make
Yes.
sense?
So
Do we have access to see the rate sheet for our kid or not?
Sam?
Or is it not
You
important?
definitely access that. There are some factors that aren't always the most current, and what we recommend, something that I actually had done with Kathy Hoyda before, was to have you come in and just sit with the sheet too, and just review the sheet with someone at the same time, so that if you have specific questions about what you're seeing there, we can answer them at that time as well.
And I guess the other piece was, you'd mentioned something about, when their hours in a facility, if they come home for a weekend, does that impact your funding?
It does. So each time that someone is not home overnight, right? So if they've been there for most of that day, they leave, and then they're gone overnight, and they don't come home until Sunday, right? So they leave Friday to Sunday. When they come home Sunday, we can get paid. And when they were there Friday, we can get paid, but Saturday we do not get paid. And that's where the occupancy factor dollar value comes into play. That occupancy factor pays us for 18 and a half absent days, right? Whether that's that they went home for a holiday visit, or they went to a hospital visit for a medical emergency, went on a vacation, any type of absence is covered under the occupancy factor, 18 and a half days. And in fact, the most recent DDD bulletin updates also does provide additional days now for medical purposes. So if someone is hospitalized or has a rehab stay, we actually are able to get reimbursed for additional 21 days.
20
days under
It's 20.
that new update as well.
And that's if you have exhausted your occupancy factor, so you have to use
that first.
That up first. And we hate to even talk about it as using up, because it is in no way intended to be a guideline of, when people can go on visits, take trips, all of that. We want people to continue to live their lives the way they want to live them. And one of the things that we are asked by the division to factor in is that different people will be present in the Scylla at different times. So We're not looking solely at one individual's absences, but what are the absences across the home?
Gotcha. Okay,
And that does help.
thank you.
Quite a bit, right? When there are folks that are kind of coming and going at different times, and it balances out in a lot of scenarios.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Gina?
Okay, on the day programming, you've got the community day services offsite and the community day services onsite. Each of them says 1,200 hours, but I'm sure it's only a total of, right?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
that's
So
about the 4.5 hours a day or whatever it is, 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you get paid more if it's if you go off-site. So, and of course, that's
it's
taken
supposed
into
to help
consideration. That's not enough to pay for the transportation and the people that have to go with and the, whatever. But I was just wondering, now we've got less than 5 years to take care of like the Thompson activities where, you're not going to be getting workshop hours anymore. So are they thinking about possibly doing more and more off-site? I mean, or what kind of programs are they coming up with to fill in when there will no longer be the pay per piece jobs at Thompson?
I do know they have been doing more venturing offsite with groups, especially as there has been less work. And I know that they're evaluating some of the other options with our therapeutic recreation partnership for STARS programs and things to maybe have folks split their weeks up and do some other integrated activities and things as well. But you're right, it is slightly bit higher reimbursement for offsite, and it doesn't cover, just like you said, the transportation costs, the admission fees for community activities and things. So they really, I know that Thompson Center in particular hired a manager, and Donna is very integrated into her local community. So she's always looking for free opportunities or low cost opportunities as well, so that we can maximize what we are getting.
Do you know how many people are currently at Thompson anymore?
So I do know on the 14C certificate, there are less than 50 people that work underneath the sub-minimum wage certificate at this point, and all of that work happens out of the Thompson Center. Those folks are there. There might be a handful of more people there that may or may not be working. We always have had lots of other programs in our day programs, right? Just like ETC or O'Shea Center or whichever name, or Bowes Road, whatever name you want to call it, in Elgin, doesn't have any line work or piece work, but it has a whole system of different types of on-site and off-site activities and learnings and Smartboard and all the different things that they have there. We have that at a variety of locations, along with, our STARS program. We do a lot with our special recreation. We're just enhancing, I know, our Northern Illinois special recreation connection. We've always done quite a bit with the Fox Valley Special Rec, which is in the more southern part of our service area for IDD. But all of these two ladies are not the CDS people. So if you want CDS info, we'll have to bring them next time, right? To get more into depth with that. I'm
Okay,
gonna go.
the second part of my question is this whole medical section, where it's the nursing and the dietitian and all of that. That's based on the HRST form. So, and you said that the HRST is every 6 months, but the Accelerate only changes once a year, if that much. So if there's a big change, is there any chance that they go back to change the rate, or no, you just get stuck with it, huh?
So the AID program nurse is responsible anytime there's a big change to update that HRST right when it happens, right when those changes occur. And then DDD does get that information electronically now from the HRST. There's an electronic system where everything's entered in, and that makes it easier to update when there's a change that happens. And then they do pull that information out of that system every 6 months. So it is evaluated, but there would need to be a significant change in someone's healthcare level that they've assigned to those HRST levels based on an increase in nursing treatments, a significant decrease in mobility, or a significant change in medications, those things, in order for them to reevaluate their nursing hours and additional supports for those things.
And
But-
then-
but you're-
I was-
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you are correct, Gina, that it, like, if somebody has a catastrophic health episode, and, they need to be, reevaluated, that's no longer something that we can ask the division to do. They will do it at the next 6-month mark. So yes, we are stuck with it until they pull the data again.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about is, a lot of the individuals, they just keep getting older. We're not getting that many younger individuals into the CILAs. And so as they age, obviously, like all of us, the medical problems and physical disability problems increase. And so if you're saying that it's just a small increment every 6 months, you're never going to get more money. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just a small little
We
bit
do
every
know what
6
you're
months.
saying.
Yeah.
We do
It's
know what you're
also-
saying.
We have to make sure that also the ICAP score, right, the adaptive score, is reflecting all those changes as well, because that's another factor where if someone's adaptive capabilities significantly change or their behavioral capacities significantly change, that can trigger a different review of the overall services and supports as well. So the two assessments go hand in hand to do that. And so that's why it's important for our case management team to update the ICAP assessment, as well as the team to update the HRST assessment.
And the thing I was going to point out about the dietitian is that you're only eligible for dietitian hours if we submit a request for that, and you have a doctor required special diet, right? So I don't just get it because I am a resident of Acilla. I have to have the paperwork done and submitted in order to get those hours if I have a special diet. So we went through a exercise a couple years ago when we learned about that, because we used to get our dietitian paid for by outside, like 708 board and other applications. And then we found out when my 55 or whatever the dietitian services that was going around the state saying, we're going to help you do we're like, wait a minute, we have a dietitian. Why we should be getting paid for that if we're providing that? So, so we went through the process of applying, and I believe at that time it was a little over 100 of our 160 people that we support that had some type of specialized diet that received those dietitian hours, and that helps pay for the dietitian's salary, right? Not every organization has a dietitian. We are lucky at AID that we've always thought that is important and figured out ways to pay for it. And then we're like, oh, we're supposed to be getting paid for it all along. So nobody told us that. So once they did, we made sure we took advantage of it. Gina, was that the end of your questions, or you have more?
Yes, that was it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move on to, let me go to Jim first, and then you, Kathy Hoyda.
Yeah. First, a comment. Hearing you guys, Sam and Stephanie, talking about the occupancy factor. When that change was made at the state a few years ago, you guys really reassured us that it would not be used as a club. And for families like Sue and I, who do regularly take our child out for an evening or a night, that is really, really important to us. So I'm very grateful for that. You've stuck by your word, so thank you. I got two questions. One is, Sam, I'm a little confused about what counts as included supports and what counts as billable supports. that line is real murky to me.
Sure, absolutely. So maybe I can pull that slide back up and share it. Everything. So everything in section 2, authorized billable supports, not in the SILA rate, that we're working on all those behavior intervention therapy services and intensive staff supports are not included.
So is intensive staff support another word for one-on-one, or are there other levels of intensive staff support?
So it is often what people do refer to as one-on-one. However, the award, as you can see, like for this individual, the awarded amount of 1,099 hours is for the entire year. So when we think of what traditionally people would think about as a one-on-one would be someone who's one-on-one and there are additional staff, and that's there all the time, right? While their person's entirely awake, but that need is based on how much the other individuals need, and then what we've requested or indicated in our documentation is required to care for the individual. So that award varies, and oftentimes it may give us a part-time staff, right, in the award to do things for about 20 to 25 hours a week to provide extra support.
So thank you. That's a really helpful slide. So I'm thinking about my son David, who is nonverbal and for years got speech therapy, certainly through his school-based services, and then Sue and I for years paid for private speech therapy. Can speech therapy be a billable service that then AID could, get, I don't know, an hour a week for, like, how do things like that work? Why are dietary services and specialized diets considered by the state additional needs, but things like speech therapy for a nonverbal adult are not? How does that work?
The explanation that I've always received is that the occupational speech and physical therapy services would be available directly through Medicaid as a medical service and therefore not funded as a waiver service.
Okay.
I think that before
Okay.
they were more often funded that way, but the expectation is that you would access those services if you needed them through Medicaid, which we all know is quite the challenge, but that does seem to be the expectation.
And I
So
will
does-
say, I was just going to add in years ago, AID took over or merged with or had merged with us the Easter Seals in the Aurora area. And at that time, we got through the mergers, we had speech therapists and a variety of things, because in children those services are more readily offered than in adult settings, right? And we were unable to keep up with those services because we could not afford with the rates that were paid and what was designated for people, like 1 hour a week for 5 people, I don't know, 10 people, even if we say 50 people, you can't get enough money to pay what a speech therapist can make and does make in regular systems, right?
Practice,
Regular healthcare systems. And so we ended up, phasing out all of that. It was long before, it's been a long, long time ago, right? It's probably 15 years ago or more here at AID. But, I think that's one of the other things, that makes it challenging to get those services is the level of expertise is difficult to purchase with the buying power of Medicaid, right? Which is a weak power.
Yeah, that's a sad answer, but great. Thank you.
And on the rate sheet, because Sam did show you where they, for speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, And the waiver rates are right there on the sheet, and those are per hour. So it's a little over $100 per hour to, and I'm sure since you private paid a speech therapist, you know that $110 doesn't buy you much. And so that's always something to keep in mind. And as Lori said, we we fundraised for a dietitian prior to being able to request that funding from the state because we knew that we needed it. And we continue to cover part of that dietitian cost through fundraising. A lot of our clients receive services from our behavior health department instead of billing therapy through the waiver because it's a better reimbursement rate. They can make in BH under Rule 132, they can bill in 15 minutes what takes us an hour to bill, like the same amount. And so,
Still doesn't pay for the service on
Yeah.
BH side. It still doesn't pay for what it costs, right? I just want to be clear about that, but it is a better rate than
But
what
it's a better
DDD
rate.
pays, right?
Yeah.
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 So
And
even though
so we've long, but we do have a couple of people on the DD side that actually I think we're down to one therapist now, that we understand she is never going to be able to bill her entire salary, but we value her expertise. And so for our more challenging DD clients that can't tolerate a typical therapy session on the BH side, we still value them having therapy, and they work with this therapist. Many of you may know her. Her name is Karen, who bills under our waiver, and we're never ever going to break even on that.
Break even, right? Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Kathy Hoyda.
For the intensive staff support that's on the sheet, if it doesn't get used, is the state going to say, then he doesn't need it?
That's not been our experience lately. What really determines if the award amount changes is changing the working capacity, for example. So if we've said that an individual was previously living with 4 individuals in one household and now there's 5, those award amounts may be adjusted because there may be additional staff that is just funded by the model, that group home 5-hour model rate may change, and that's where those hours may fluctuate, right? We've identified that there's a need for this additional staff support. We've provided all of the documentation, the schedule that we expect that someone would need to work with those tasks. There are times when it's hard to provide that service when you're in a staffing deficit, but we've not experienced that, oh, you're not billing this, so you clearly don't need it scenario, right?
Mhm.
What we've experienced is if there's a change overall at the site level, that they'll do an adjustment.
And even then, the adjustment doesn't guarantee a staff to come and do it. Right?
Right.
So we're still waiting. Okay.
Yeah, and I will say that since before COVID started, we had a DSP hiring challenge, right? During COVID, that exacerbated, and as we have come out of COVID, the hardest position to fill is that enhanced service one-on-one type of position, right? Those positions are the hardest position I think we have in the organization to fill. And even oftentimes when people start and get trained and then are injured or just experience the hard challenge of being a one-on-one for a person who needs one-on-one support, then they go, hey, I'm going to go be a DSP in a house that like doesn't have any one-on-one needs, right? And still, make comparable money and be okay. I mean, we do pay a enhanced rate and those kind of things, but it has been our biggest challenge to try to fill those positions. And it's why, if when we were talking about CDS earlier, it's why Keeler Center serves half of the people that it used to, because we can't hire the staff to safely bring back the rest of the people that would like to come back, or the new people that would like to come to Keeler and be served, because that particular position is so difficult to fill.
Another trend that I've seen lately as well, that folks will come on board in a second shift or a third shift position. They'll get some experience. They'll start to feel really comfortable. But what they really wanted was day hours. And so then when an opportunity opens up for them to transition to day hours, we kind of get snagged away from us. And I think that's happened in my programs alone 3 times in the last couple months, right? So it's like average, you hire 2 people a month, and a month later only one of them are still standing in your program. They're still employees at AID, so we love that, but we're losing folks to that I want the day hours, I want the Monday through Friday. And so a lot of the things that Lori's kind of helped us do were to incentivize those hours between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. the hours anytime on the weekend, right? There's a $2 differential. And so folks, we're hoping that will keep attracting people, but that has still been somewhat of a challenge. I check in with our recruitment team about every 2 weeks or so as well. And that's a sticking point when they're reaching out to applicants, is that what applicants are looking for are more of the Monday through Friday, daytime hour type jobs that don't always exist in our programs. And so it becomes a challenge. Or they're looking for an overnight position so they can go work also their Monday through Friday 9 to 5 jobs, and then they're not actually providing the appropriate supervision. So then we end up having to address that as well. But we keep trying, right? So a lot of the holidays pay that has been added as well is incentivizing individuals to work in our residential programs, and we keep trying to talk about the plus sides, right? Not just what's attractive about working all day and not all night.
Just need a couple hours in the evening. Okay.
Me too. I need a couple hours in the evening, I feel like. Somebody to help me. It's rough. Other questions? Gina?
I have another question. Okay, so I've got Kim's rate sheet here, and it's got in here the hours that she gets per year for licensed social worker or a social worker, group therapy, individual therapy. I understand there's only 60 hours a year that she can get, but do you even have a social worker to fill that position anymore? Because she used to have social work and she hasn't had it for quite a while. So are there even any social workers that you have anymore?
So I have one, Karen, and she has seen Kim occasionally. She doesn't always participate, and there are quite a few folks who they see Karen maybe once a month or twice a month for about half an hour. And so she kind of rotates between those groups and those locations. So she actually supports our DD clients from Elgin clear to Yorkville, and she rotates where she's at day to day and throughout the week as well. And so it's one of the things that we also do try to send out referrals to our behavioral health outpatient to connect with other therapists as well. And I know that on their region maps, Kim's home is on the border of 2 regions, because I've kind of done some digging too for that, and that makes it a little challenge, because it's like, which region's gonna pick up those individuals. They do sometimes struggle with their staffing capabilities also, and we get a waiting list, and so that's when Karen gets spread a little thin, because she is still trying to support everyone who has a need at some base level.
Now, does AID lose that funding because there's, 60 hours is supposedly allocated on this form? So then do you lose the money when Kim's not seen by somebody?
So that's one of those billable supports add-ons, so it's not counted in the total rate calculation at the bottom. We
Oh,
just
okay.
get to collect that hourly amount when we bill that hourly amount. So
Oh,
that's like
okay.
a plus factor.
And even though, like the person is not receiving the service, so that's a detriment, but then you're not expending an expense because you're not paying a staff person, right, to do that, because you don't have a staff person to do it. That's why you're not delivering it. So it kind of
Right.
evens out, right? But
Well, I was
oftentimes,
just thinking AID was losing out on money, or I didn't understand how that was working, but
yeah,
heaven forbid that you leave money on the table, right?
Right.
we try not to.
That- I'm here presenting about this to you because it's been kind of like my pet project, self-appointed. There are some not so interesting webinars available through DDD, where you can just kind of sit and listen, and I just poured over it a couple times right in a row and just kept trying to glean what I could from it to figure out those dollar values, and where are we leaving dollars on the table, or where are we not providing enough support, and we're funded to do that, right? Just to really kind of crack the case on rates and what's going on there. So you don't want to ever sit with me if the division is having a conversation about the rates, because I'm probably full of really sarcastic, terrible comments about the way that they're doing some things. But it's just something that I've really gotten into, and trying to uncover the secrets about what's out there, what's possible, what's not possible.
And we appreciate you doing that, because as I mentioned earlier, they don't always tell us stuff, right? So for years, we provided dietitian services without knowing that we could apply to get hourly funding that we could bill for dietitian services, right? And again, it's not enough to pay for that whole position, but it sure pays for half of it or more. So that means we only have to fundraise for the other half, and we can use some of that other money that we're fundraising for a different hole that is not completely filled, right? So we're constantly, trying to look at those kinds of things, move money around, and not just keep asking and being satisfied by what we're not told, or by the placating remarks that people tell. We also work ongoing with our trade associations and our fellow peers and advocates, right, to change, right, what is funded and isn't. So you might remember that we used to get paid for 1,100 hours of community day services. That was 100 hours a month, except for the last month of the year, because their premise was that people missed a month's worth of hours being sick and vacation and other things. And all of those providers always found that was not true. People did not miss 100 hours worth of activity in CDS. And so that finally, after years and years of complaints, got fixed. And one of the Guidehouse recommendations, where they said, yeah, you don't have to do that last month for free. Because if you think about it, we're really doing probably 7 hours worth of work between transportation, getting ready for the day, helping people come in, transition into the program, do the programmatic work of those 5 hours that you get paid for, then transitioning out, exiting for the day, transportation home, all of those pieces. So, we're getting paid for 5 hours, but a lot more work is happening than 5 hours. And we have always found, and you guys tell me, all you people, we all work. How many people can you hire that you're going to hire for 25 hours a week? Not very many, right? So that is not, like you need to pay people 35 to 40 hours a week, right? As a full-time job and be able to have benefits. So where are you getting the rest of that money from when you're getting paid for 25 hours, right? There have been changes. We continue to advocate for that. We continue to advocate for updates and modernization and flexibility and changes in the design of the system as a whole, right? That all of us continue to work towards in order to, be person-centered and really meet the dreams and goals and ideals which were exhibited in home and community-based settings regulations and other, changes that have happened over the years to try to make these systems more responsive to how people really want to live. So. All right. Have we answered everyone's questions?
You can
Alright.
also find my email address on page if you're there and you have another question that maybe you didn't want to ask in front of the group, or if you do want to collaborate with your case management team and myself to sit down and look at your loved one's sheet again in detail or take a copy, we're happy to coordinate things to do that.
Thanks very much,
Well,
Sam.
Yeah, Sam, thanks for all the work you did putting that presentation together. I feel like this was Rate Sheet 101, and I need to go back and watch watch the recording of this again. But the way you broke it down with your typed in remarks on each sheet, that was really helpful. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Thank you.
All right. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 20th. And we are going to, I think, be talking about communications and how those upgrades and processes are working and other ideas and or input from you all as to, how that's working and what you might want to see changed or added to that is a tentative subject at the moment. And I don't think it's going to change, but we will see what happens. It's slated as an advisory session. So that's what we thought we wanted is conversation around communications from AID and, how the page is working and all of the different things that we put into place after last year's advisory about what you wanted to see in terms of communication. Remember, Jem just invited somebody to step up and be the kind of chair of this group, the Family Council. It doesn't, I would think I would have to say, Jim, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it doesn't require a ton of hours of work, right? It's basically we work together to set the schedule for the next year and to set what the different dates are going to be about and just like encourage people to attend and then join on the Family Council night and help lead the meeting. So
And it is not a billable service, unfortunately. And within the next week, you all should get an email through the Family Council email giving you all the information about the new advisory subcommittee that we're setting up and the application process. And we'll keep you in the loop as we move forward on that.
Yes, Kathy?
I'm not volunteering. A comment on the snow day the other day. Yeah, I did find out, so that was awesome. But what happened to the system where you guys were going to send out something that told everybody, by the way, the day programs are closed? I didn't get an email.
We didn't close day programs. We
What?
did not close day programs.
So what, different houses decided not to tell. Okay.
Yep. So some of
I didn't
our
know that. I could have brought them in.
Yep. Some of our houses that have ambulatory issues, older clients, people with high medical needs, made decisions whether or not to attend on that very cold day, Tuesday, right?
Tuesday.
Yeah, I think Tuesday. We rarely, if ever, close at AID, much to the chagrin of staff who routinely ask me if we're having a snow day or a cold day tomorrow. But we run lots of programs that it doesn't matter if one part's closed, the other part's got to pick up the slack then, right? Because we're still
Right.
supporting people. So we, it takes a lot for us. So I think the last time we closed was the polar vortex, so which was incredibly, and we closed 2 days on that year, but we don't usually close. We closed preemptively, I think it was last year or the year before, because there's supposed to be this big blizzard and then it didn't happen, and I was like, forget that. Because sometimes it's so hard to get a hold of people in the morning, right? To let them know, hey, stop, don't come, keep everybody at home. So we thought, day before it was going to be this horrible, horrible thing. And it was all through the night. And so we made the decision the afternoon before, and then it snowed like a half inch. That was enough for me to learn that, all of that, because all the things that we do, there's very few things we can really close, right? Because even on, our crisis care system is always open, our mental health services, our mobile crisis response, our living room, all of our CILAs, our, apartments. So you just have to arrange to support people in different locations than you normally would. So if it is really about life and limb, we will, but mostly we leave it up to people to determine whether they want to participate in day programs or the other pieces of the organization.
I would have taken him in. He was at my house because it was closed. But I would have brought him in if I'd known that it was open. So yay, the communication got to me ahead of time that they were staying at the house is how they worded it, but didn't say that Keeler was open, and I would have taken them. Anyway.
That's a good note, though. That's a good note, Kathy, to remind that we could add that piece of information into the communication, right? That, the house is staying home, but community day services is open for people who wish to attend, right? So.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, that's a good note. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you all attending, and your questions and your dedication to understanding the system and how your loved ones are affected by it. So have a good night, and we will see you in about a month.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Bye-bye.